Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would do a little video on this today. For those of us that know the recent fight that just happened between Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce, we know the results. If you watch the fight, we know that in an upset victory, Joe Joyce ended up taking it. So it was a very close fight. It was a very good fight, but Joe Joyce ended up stopping Daniel Dubois actually, to many people's surprise in the latter rounds. He ended up stopping him, I believe, in round 10. So it was a very good fight. It was a very close fight, but at the end of the day, Joe Joyce ended up pulling it out. Good for him. But when it comes down to it, of course, a lot of people are going to criticize Danny Dubois not only because they were upset by him because they expected more from him, but also because of how he went out. He ended up taking a knee in the fight, and he ended up basically quitting on the ring, or in the ring, excuse me, and he was counted out. He didn't seem to want to bother to get back up. Now, I was somewhat critical of Danny Dubois a little bit as well because I said, okay, well, I doubt that you have a broken orbital eye bone because I didn't see anything land hard enough, in the fight basically to where you would have a broken orbital eye bone. But, so basically I was saying, well, it looks like you basically just quit because you had a swollen eye. And I think that you could have had a little bit more heart. That being said, now from what I'm hearing from a couple more sources, and I'm not sure how true this is because I don't think this has been 100% confirmed yet, it is very possible that Daniel Dubois actually had a broken orbital eye bone in his fight with Joe Joyce. And if he did, that would certainly make it more, in my opinion, excusable to why he took a knee in that fight, because a broken orbital eye bone is nothing to mess around with. And I know, especially a lot of the American fans, and I'm American myself, but then the American fans especially can get very obnoxious whenever a British fighter loses, because they always say, man, like I saw a guy say, man, what's in the water over there in Britain? They just got nothing but quitters and all those sort of things that they were saying. Because they were saying like, Britain, British people, they got no heart and all sort of stupid bullshit. Anthony Joshua quit against Ruiz, Kilbuck quit against Spence, and now Dubois quit against Joyce. But of course, Joyce is British too, but, it is what it is. You get the point. But the bottom line is this. You have to take a look and see overall, why was the reason that they quit, or what was the reason overall that they quit? Because if it was like a Gail Morrig in that situation where they were just getting embarrassed, and then they quit on their stool, okay, that's something that is not really that excusable. Like Gail Morrigan that wasn't that badly hurt against Vasyl Lomachenko, and he pretty much quit on his stool because he was getting embarrassed. That's something to me overall to where it's like, okay, you didn't have as much heart as we thought you did. But when you take a look at, something like even Nicholas Walters versus Vasyl Lomachenko, for example, a lot of people got on Nicholas Walters' case when he quit against Vasyl Lomachenko. I never did because Nicholas Walters said that he was starting to get hurt. He was way behind on the scorecards. He was losing every single round. And when it came down to the overall, he said that he was starting to see double. I have no problem with the fighter quitting at that point, as long as they give credit to the other fighter and say, listen, dude, you were just the much better man than I was. All right? No problem with that. Once again, if Danny Dubois, we'll see what the severity of the injury was. But if he had a broken orbital eye bone, I can completely understand him quitting in this fight. I have no problem with that whatsoever. If he quit in this fight because he had a broken orbital eye bone, because that's a very reasonable excuse. And it was the same thing when a lot of the Errol Spence Jr. fans and a lot of the American fans, who, to be quite honest with you, can be quite obnoxious. And I'm not saying there's not obnoxious British fans either, but the American fans just they really get on my nerves. But when it comes down to the overall, when it comes down to it, they were trying to criticize Kilbuck for quitting. Even my father, who thought Kilbuck was going to win the fight against Errol Spence, and I did too, because I thought that Kilbuck actually had more, more of a all-around better boxing game than Errol Spence, and in some areas he, has better skills than Errol Spence, but obviously not all around. Otherwise, he would have won the fight. But I can't criticize Kilbuck for quitting in that fight because he also had a broken orbital eye bone. And I can only imagine what type of pain they're in and how uncomfortable it is, to fight with a broken orbital eye bone. I probably would not continue fighting either. So it's very hard for me to judge those people because, in all honesty, I mean, would you want to continue with the broken orbital eye bone? I don't think anyone wants to continue fighting with a broken orbital eye bone. So it is what it is. A lot of people can criticize those people all they want to, but let's be real. You're not going to continue fighting with a broken orbital eye bone. I don't care what anybody says. All right, these these couch potatoes overall on YouTube, these keyboard warriors, they can sit here and act like overall, well, he quit, but you wouldn't be fighting with a broken orbital eye bone either. Now, whether Daniel Dubois had a broken orbital eye bone, we'll see what happens. We'll see what comes out in the news. If he didn't have a broken orbital eye bone, then to me it's like, okay, yeah, he kind of quit, and that is a little bit of a question of his heart. But we'll see what happens. But if he had a broken orbital eye bone, that's a completely different circumstance. I can't question their heart off of that because that's a horrible injury. But it is what it is. Anyways, enough talking about that. Let me just talk about overall the future of these two fighters and where I think they're going to go. Well, first of all, I was never really overly impressed with Daniel Dubois anyway. Daniel Dubois, like the fighter people said Anthony Joshua was. When Anthony Joshua was first coming out, like you had these Wilder fans that were like, oh, Anthony Joshua's nothing but a hype job. He's nothing but Frank Bruno, all this sort of stupid bullshit. Like, clearly guys who had no idea what the fuck they were talking about, because Anthony Joshua has defeated multiple contenders, like top contenders. But it is what it is. But when it comes down to it overall, the fighter that people said Anthony Joshua was going to be, like the Anthony Joshua haters when he was first coming out, that's actually what Daniel Dubois is. Like, Daniel Dubois is a very straight up and down fighter. He doesn't move his head around a lot. He does not have very good defense. And I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua does not have some of these problems either, but he's obviously greater and better than Daniel Dubois is. And also a harder puncher. I never understood this narrative that Daniel Dubois, he's the best puncher in British boxing heavyweight history. Like, I never seen that. Daniel Dubois is a good puncher, don't get me wrong. He's like a B-class puncher, but he's not an A-class puncher. I never seen that from Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is not an A-class puncher. Neither is Joe Joyce. Now, do I see Daniel Dubois making it to the top 10 later on? I think that's possible. We'll see what happens. I would love to see Daniel Dubois in a fight with Carlos Takam, or I would love to see him in a fight with, say, what's that guy's name? Derek Chisora. I would love to see him fight one of those guys next, see if he can handle those guys. And that will really tell us where Daniel Dubois is going to stand, because Joe Joyce with this recent win, like this fight overall was probably going to be, okay, who's going to make it into the top 10 first? And Joe Joyce just made it into the top 10. Some may even say now that's when he just made it into the top 5, but I don't know if I can put him that far because I need to see Joe Joyce against some of the other top contenders. I need to see him against Joseph Parker. I need to see him against Luis Ortiz and Andrew Ruiz. I think some other people already have that idea because I've heard multiple people in some of my Facebook boxing groups, they said, let's make Luis Ortiz versus, Joe Joyce. Come on, let's do this. That'd be a great fight. And I agree, that would be a great fight. I would love to see that fight. If that fight can get made, let it happen. I would love to personally see that. So for Daniel Dubois, do I see him becoming a top 10 later on in the future? I think it's possible. I need to see him against a Derek Chisora next, or maybe even a Charles Martin, something like that. I think he needs to fight a top 20 guy first. Then we'll kind of go from there. And then we'll see if he can make it into the top 10. Do I ever see him becoming top 5? Probably not. And a certain amount of people would disagree with that, but we'll see what happens. When it comes to Joe Joyce, I could see him becoming top 5. Do I ever see him defeating any of the big 3 between Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, or Tyson Fury? No, personally I don't, but we'll see what happens. You never know. I just don't think he has the skill set or the hand speed for that, or the movement. I think he has way too many flaws, and I think he's just way too awkward to beat any of those guys, because those 3 are the main elite fighters there, and they're on another level from everybody else from what I see. And also, of course, you have to worry about Andrew Ruiz, but the fights that'll be interesting for Joe Joyce will be Joseph Parker, maybe Andrew Ruiz, Luis Ortiz, Dillian White, Alexander Povetkin. I would love to see Joe Joyce in one of those fights next. That would be a terrific fight. From what I'm hearing, it's possible maybe he could get an Anthony Joshua fight next if Anthony Joshua makes it past Kubrat Pulev, or maybe Usyk versus Joe Joyce. That'd be another great fight, because that would be the biggest heavyweight that, what's his name? Usyk would be to face. So that would be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting. There's a lot of good fights out there for Joe Joyce. There's a lot of good fights out there for Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois needs to be built up a little bit more slowly now. to not damage his career, and we'll see what happens. Daniel Dubois, I would love to see him fight Derek Chisora next. I would love to see him fight Carlos Takam or Takam, however you pronounce it. I would love to see Joe Joyce face Luis Ortiz, Joseph Parker, or Alexander Povetkin next, or Dillian White. So since most likely Alexander Povetkin and Dillian White are going to be having a rematch soon, let's say Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz versus Joe Joyce would be a great fight. I would love to see that fight. So we'll see what happens. But that's really about it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I just thought that I would comment on that. Let's not be too quick to judge because we don't know what Daniel Dubois was doing in there or what he was dealing with in there. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, guys, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.